Hey guys, today in this video we're going to be going over some upgrades from CARBO for the LCP MAX. We have a new flat short stroke trigger with a Pretravel set screw in there, and then we have a spring kit with a 12-pound and a 10-pound hammer spring. So let's open these bad boys up and show you how to install them. So the trigger is going to come with instructions too. It's going to have everything that you need in there, but this video is just here to help you guys with the install. So we're going to open up this trigger first, show you what's in the kit. So you have a nice, clean, flat aluminum trigger. And it's going to come with a Pretravel set screw and a trigger pin and a hex key to help you assemble. All right, the tools you're going to need for this install is going to be a bunch block, some Loctite, either blue or red. If it's blue, make sure it's 242. If it's red, make sure it's 263. This is our CARBO gunsmith shank installation tool, a flathead screwdriver, a hammer, a punch set, 1/16, 3/32, and 1/8, and then some safety goggles. So first things first, we're going to check to make sure the gun is clear, and it is. And we're going to take off this slide. Take out the pin and put it to the side. Slide comes right off like that, and then now we're left with the frame of the gun. We're going to take our bench block here and punch out this pin here. 3/32 punch. Just give it a nice easy tap. And then set that pin to the side. We don't want to lose any parts. And then in the back here, we're going to take 3/32 punch and just punch it right through the back. There's a little hole, if you can see. We're just going to push it straight through, and then it's going to pop out this little hammer spring cap. We're going to take our punch and go under this hammer spring set pin right here and the spring and kind of pry it up. But be careful that this doesn't fly out, so you want to rest it on the table and slowly release that, just like that. So then we have the pin right here. Put that to the side, and now your trigger housing can easily slide right out, just like that. And make sure that when you pull it out, you have your fingers over both these springs here, because they will fly out on you, and then you'll lose them, and you don't want that to happen. So we're gonna take our slide catch off and spring, and then the trigger bar is also gonna come out. We have to take apart the trigger to get that pin down at the bottom. All right, so now we're going to take our 1/16 punch and punch out this pin in the trigger to remove the safety blade. Just like that. Make sure that spring doesn't come flying, so we're going to slowly release that safety blade. And then we can allow that spring to drop. Now we have access to the trigger pin in the bottom of the trigger. And again, take our 1/16 punch and just push it out. And there we have it. Take out the trigger return spring, and then flip it to the other side and punch out this trigger pivot pin. And now the trigger is free to come out. Just so we don't lose any pieces, we're going to reassemble the trigger, or the OEM trigger. Put this pin back in it. So the CARBO kit does already come with the trigger pin, so we will put this trigger pin right back in there and set it to the side and save it for a rainy day. All right, now we're going to take our trigger, pull out the Pretravel set screw. We don't want to lose that. It's a small piece, so make sure we don't lose that. Take our hex key. So now that your gun's disassembled, we're going to take our set screw, put it in the hex key, just like that, and we're going to blue Loctite or red Loctite this into the trigger so that it doesn't move when you are shooting. If you don't use Loctite, that set screw is going to walk right out, and then your trigger will have problems resetting, and we don't want that to happen. So here we're using blue Loctite 242. This is the removable stuff. So we're going to apply a good amount around that and screw it into this front threaded hole right here. Make sure you don't screw it in all the way, because the more it sticks out, the more Pretravel you're going to reduce. So we're going to go maybe about halfway for right now. Just dab off the access Loctite there. So now we're going to take our trigger housing and put it right through the middle there. Take our trigger pivot pin and slide it on in. Nice and easy. And now we're going to take our spring kit, CARBO spring kit, with the hammer spring, trigger return spring, and the firing pin spring. So we have two hammer springs, a lighter one and a heavier 12-pound one. The lighter one's going to come with this red painted spring, and then 12-pound spring is going to be a blue painted spring. We're going to push down on this sear here, and then this pin will slide right out so we can remove the hammer, and then that can fly back open. This one's already kind of open. Your OEM hammer spring will be more closed. To open it up, you're going to want to take a flathead and kind of wedge it in between it and pry it open, as you twist, just to open it up a little bit more. So that's easier, so that when you take the hammer, you can push it right out. And then we're gonna take our CARBO. This one's the 12-pound spring. This opening will also need to be opened up a little bit. So we're gonna take our flathead again and kind of pry it open. Just like that. There we go. And then if you want to close it up, you can take some pliers. Also just re-close that back up a little bit. Pinch it, make sure you're careful with this. Just like that. Hammer spring attached to the hammer. And now we're gonna push down on this sear again and line up the holes. Put your pin back in there. And then make sure it goes through both sides. Just like that. So now that's going to stay in there because the sear is putting tension on it. And now we can go ahead and take our trigger return spring here. Make sure this leg is facing in the 5 o'clock direction down here when you put it in, so that it can have some tension when you rotate it back around under the trigger bar. We want to make sure that this set screw isn't too far out so that it allows the trigger pin to slide right in. If you're having trouble putting the trigger pin in because the hole is rotated too far forward, you're going to want to push back this trigger and then just tighten up that set screw a little bit so that you can have some room to install the trigger pin. So we're going to go ahead and get our trigger pin out and just slide it right in the hole. Just like that. So now the trigger return spring's locked in, and the trigger pivot pin and the trigger. What's cool about this trigger too is that for disassembly, it has this little hole in the back of the safety blade here that you can take your hex key and shove it right through to remove that trigger pin, just like that. So you don't have to disassemble your trigger as you remove it. And you just, again, you can punch that out, and now you can fully clean your gun if you ever need to. So now that we have that installed, we're gonna go ahead and put our trigger bar back on, and we're gonna rotate the trigger return spring right under the trigger bar, just like that. But make sure you have this squeezed on or else it'll fly back out. So you wanna keep fingers on it at all times. We're gonna take our magazine catch, put it right in there, and take our magazine catch spring, wedge it right in between the two. So now that we have them both in, keep your fingers on it so that nothing flies out, and grab your frame again. So we're gonna go trigger side first a little bit. There's this groove in the trigger housing that matches the notch in this frame. So we're gonna put trigger side in first and then push this back end in to kind of wedge it in there so that it locks into that. Then we're gonna take our pin, put it back in and hammer it back in, just like that. Now we're gonna flip it over and put our hammer spring set pin right in the notch right there, and then take our 3/32 punch. Let's grab the hook of the hammer spring and pull up on it until we can get it right around the pin, just like that. And then we're gonna slowly pull out the punch so that it locks right in to one of the grooves on the pin. And then we're gonna take our hammer spring cap and close it right up. So now your frame's done, we can put that to the side. Then next will be the firing pin spring assembly. So first things first, we're gonna wanna take out that OEM firing pin spring. It's a lot heavier, so if you keep this one in and use our other springs for the spring kit, you're gonna get a lot of light strikes. You don't want that to happen. So we're gonna knock out this pin. We're gonna take our bench block here and hammer it out. Just like that. So now be careful removing this punch here, because this pin's gonna wanna fly out through the tension of the spring inside. So put your finger over this bottom back here and then slowly pull out. And now it catches it, and you can remove the spring in firing pin. And we're gonna replace it with our much lighter firing pin spring. So if you see there's this little notch in the firing pin, this is what's going to be captured by the pin as it's put in, so that it can only go in that much motion, range of motion. First of all, we're gonna make sure that this notch is facing upside down when you reinstall it back in. So we're going ahead, push that in, making sure the notch is mostly down. And we have this little fixture for you. Grab your fixture, depress the spring with the 1/16 punch, and then slide it right in there. Now your firing pin spring is depressed with the fixture, and you can go ahead and punch your pin back in. Use the bigger hole side, so that's easier to punch in. I use a 1/8 punch because the hole is actually smaller. It gets smaller inside there, so the 1/8 punch won't be able to actually fit in, so you'll know exactly when to stop. So just to get it started, So we can get it started, and then once it's started, we can get the 1/8 punch right in there. And you'll be able to hear the difference in the sound as you hit the bottom of where it stops. You hear that? It means it's fully seated in there now. Make sure your guide rod has both its springs in there, or else you'll have some feeding issues and cycling issues. Then we can go ahead and pull the fixture back out, test to make sure that's fully working. We're good to go from there. We can go ahead and put the slide back on. Make sure your hammer isn't all the way forward, or else your slide won't slide back on. We're gonna go ahead, take our takedown pin, push it right in, check it. Just like that, feels great. So from here, if you want a little bit less pre-travel, you can go up and under, take your hex key again, and adjust it from here. Put it right in, and then you're gonna wanna, if you want less pre-travel, you're gonna wanna stick it out more. So you're gonna wanna unscrew it. And if you want more pre-travel, you're gonna wanna screw that in more. And then once you have it set to your right preferences, you're gonna wanna let that Loctite set for 24 hours. So this trigger is also compatible with the LCP2. The only difference in a disassembly is that there's gonna be these 2 pins here that you're gonna wanna knock out instead of the one for the LCP MAX. So check out our spring kit video for the LCP2. It's gonna be the same exact disassembly and then the same exact assembly for our trigger here. So a neat little feature that we have in our spring kit is that we have a sound suppressant inside our hammer spring, so that when you hear, this is full OEM, when you hear the gun fire, you'll hear that ringing of the hammer spring. Do you hear that? Do it again. So our hammer spring, we have a sound suppressant inside it so it doesn't make that ringing, if you hear. It's just nice and quiet all the way through. Okay, here we're gonna do a trigger pull test. With this gun, we've got full OEM springs in it. And this one, we have our 12-pound spring. And in this gun, we have our 10-pound spring. So let's see the differences. All right, we'll start with the full OEM. Check that is clear. You get 6 pounds, 9.6 ounces. 7 pounds, 2.7 ounces. And 6 pounds, 4 ounces. 6 pounds, 2.4 ounces. And 6 pounds, 2.8 ounces. And that averaged out to about 6 pounds, 5.8 ounces. All right, we have our 12-pound hammer spring in the back here. We're gonna make sure the gun is clear. And we're gonna pop off the hammer spring cap to check the spring, show that is our 12-pound with the blue. 4 pounds, 10.1 ounces. 4 pounds, 6 ounces. 4 pounds, 13 ounces. 4 pounds, 12 ounces. And for the last one, 4 pounds, 10 ounces for an average of 4 pounds, 11.3 ounces. So with the 12-pound hammer spring, you'll get about a pound to a pound and a half reduction in trigger pull from OEM. Now we're gonna grab our gun installed with the 10-pound hammer spring. Check to make sure the gun is clear. And then we're gonna pop off the hammer spring cap to check that it is the red hammer spring, which it is. 2 pounds, 15.9 ounces. 2 pounds, 15.6 ounces. Again, 2 pounds, 15.6 ounces. 3 pounds on the dot. 2 pounds, 15.6. 2 pounds, 15.6 ounces. And 3 pounds, 0.6 ounces for an average of 2 pounds and 15.7 ounces. And some of these guns are more worn in than others. We do use these for testing, so that's why you'll see a little bit lighter. If it's a brand new gun, you might get a couple of ounces heavier trigger pulls with our spring kits. So just let those break in a little bit and then you should be good to go. And if you have any questions, send us an email at help@mcarbo.com.